Hey, everybody. Welcome to MovieStrange, episode 34. Drew, how's it going?
It's good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Do you have
no animals have chewed on me today.
That's good.
So
your hands, you can see
start.
your knuckles, you said. That's good. That's
right.
a good sign.
There'll be enough eating and upsetting hands in the movie we're going to talk about. So you can leave it on the screen.
Crazy. All right. We'll talk about that in a second. And you just got through Thanksgiving. You had, melancholy, had good and bad, and you're about to head into the next holiday season. Everything lined up for that?
That's right. It's already, it's all Hanukkah all the time. So
there you go. All right. Well,
night 3 is on.
As a Christian or a non-practicing Christian, the fact that I go into stores now before Thanksgiving and the Christmas music is blaring, it's ridiculous. We've gone crazy. It's just awful.
I mean, it's a nice break from the Halloween stuff, but still,
I'd rather the Halloween stuff and just give us after Thanksgiving start laying it in, but not before. But okay, but I digress. Let's talk about what
I'm a bad American. I'm not inclined to worship either God or corporations. But I will give these companies like Target credit. They said, we're not going to open on Thanksgiving, and we're not going to open on Thanksgiving ever again.
That's good for them.
There are people who have to work, different jobs on that day that people spend with their families, and to get a break from work that's by no means essential is very nice of them. Yeah. So that made me smile when I saw that news, and a number of other stores did that too. So.
Well, I think the thing that's coming out of this COVID nightmare that we're in and going to be in for a while is workers are starting to realize their importance, and the side of that is corporations are starting to realize workers' importance, and maybe they're starting to figure things out, because for the longest time they've been treated like crap, and I think this idea that people are lazy and don't want to go back to work is just bullshit. Yeah. And people are realizing that why should I go back for $3 an hour when they're making tons and tons and tons of money. So hopefully, if there's anything good that comes out of this stuff, it's that.
Look, I mean,
seems like we're going to be in it for a while. So,
yeah, the fact is that nothing will change without great violence and blood, and even if it does change, it may not last. That's just the way that history goes. But it is nice to see labor, just the general idea of labor in our country, have some kind of leverage and power and force some respect for what they do. Because the fact is, like Amazon, robots can't do everything. If everybody who worked in Amazon warehouses said, we're not going to work today, they'd find other people. But that day, it would actually affect the company. And a lot of smaller businesses are discovering that.
Yeah, they're seeing that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Especially restaurants, for God's sakes.
All
right. Well, let's talk about the 4 words from last week, which were these: barren, sorrow, tree, ravenous. What a film. What a film. We had a little break because of the holidays. I watched this film a few weeks ago, and oh my God, it's still in there. You okay?
Yeah, no, I'm just double checking something on my screen here.
All right,
we're good.
I'm gonna show the poster from this film. And I'm gonna let you pronounce the director's name there, please.
His name is, I believe, Jan Svankmajer. He's a Czech filmmaker. I think he's in his 80s now, and he is definitely a unique filmmaker who has influenced a lot of much more well-known filmmakers and animators like Terry Gilliam and lots of other people with distinct styles. And this movie is from 2000.
Yeah.
So it's a live action movie with his characteristic stop motion animation, and more importantly, his very characteristic storytelling subject style mood.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he's as distinct a filmmaker as a David Lynch or a Wes Anderson or something, when you're looking at a Svankmajer movie. So,
and it's called Little Otik. Little
Otik. And the name of the story that's based on, I believe it's pronounced Otesánek, and that's a Czech fairy tale from the 1800s.
Yeah, I'm going to show the trailer, and I think this trailer is an English version well, they kind of get into that fairy tale a little bit. So here, take a look at this, and we'll talk about it when we come back.
Once upon a time, there was an ordinary man and woman who couldn't have a baby, so they had to invent one. It was a most unusual baby.
This definitely fits the movie Strange.
Good.
All right, give a little synopsis, and then we'll get into it, because this is a crazy film, which I love.
So the story of the movie, which is essentially the story of the fairy tale, which I mentioned, and which you can see in the trailer, it looks like a hand-painted animated scenes in the trailer, and that is in the movie. They're actually the young girl is reading the book. That is the story. So the painting is sort of a weird stop motion hand painted looking flat thing that's telling the story of the fairy tale. Essentially, there's a couple. They want to have children. She can't get pregnant. She's devastated. Her husband wants to help her and ease her pain, and he also wants children. And his wife is heartbroken. And then one day he's in the woods and he's like, oh, that tree stump looks like a baby. So I'll cut it down and I'll bring it home. And his wife will be like, oh, you got me a baby. That's so sweet. Except she's actually like, oh, awesome. You got me a baby. Now I'm going to pretend to be pregnant for 9 months. And then I'm going to have this baby, which is a log that has a face on it and limbs. And already that's weird enough. But then it actually comes to life and it's really, really hungry. And that's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie. Now, yes, that's the movie. But there's so many interesting, weird. Okay, so you got the stop motion animation that this director's, I guess, known for.
Yeah, that's his. Stop motion and claymation are. Jan Svankmajer is like. I mean, he's an incredibly well-known and respected animator and a staple of film history and avant-garde filmmaking, experimental filmmaking, and film festivals and stuff. He's also a film studies staple. So if you've taken any film classes, you don't have to go to film school. Like you go to college, you take an intro to film class. They're going to talk about Citizen Kane and they're going to talk about Jaws, and they're probably going to talk about Jan Svankmajer. And if you look on YouTube, if you look up his name, just make sure you spell it right. You'll find dozens of shorts and features, and they're all very distinct and often unsettling, and they're about a lot of the things that are in this movie in terms of both themes and the imagery. It's a lot of stuff of eating and mouths and disembodied hands and a close-up. There's a lot of unsettling, kind of not very cinematic close-ups of faces and mouths in this movie.
Well, I mean, the thing that, okay, you mentioned the food thing, put aside all the other weirdness going on, and the fact that the guy, it's actually a tree stump that he shapes into a baby. You can see as soon as he gives it to her, he's immediately regretting that decision. Immediately. He's like, oh no, she's totally grabbed onto this thing. Yeah. And his decision, he was like, I shouldn't have never done that. But all the shots of people, first of all, eating food.
Yep.
And the spoons going into vats. The woman's always one of the families in this is the little girl who reads throughout the show is reading the fairy tale that this is based on.
Yeah, it's all set in an apartment building.
Apartment complex.
The main couple is a couple that lives in one of the apartments, and then the other characters are like the manager and this couple with this little girl and this old pedophile.
Right.
And the various people that come through an apartment building, like a mailman and that sort of stuff. So,
and the girl is an only child who wants her parents to have another baby. So when she finds out there's going to be another baby, she gets all into it. But they show her eating eggs. Like there's a scene where she's breaking the yolk of the egg and close up on her. And every time he dips into the stew and pulls out, it's just that made me very uncomfortable. That stuff.
It's very visceral and gross.
Oh my God. And I'm not a food guy.
Svankmajer does a lot of that stuff.
But there's all this other stuff going on in the film. Like you talk about the pedophile who the girl is constantly accusing of, and he's leering up her dress, and he's got those shots of her, right? And her little school dress is popping up, and she ends up using it at the end of the film to kind of trap him or something, I think. Yeah. Right? Because now this we can spoil it because I don't know, 2000, I don't know if anybody's even seen it. this stump baby becomes real, starts getting hungry, super hungry, to the point
bigger
where
and bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger, and eating everything in its path, or anything that these. First of all, the parents are starting to feed it people and things. They're bringing meat home, lots of pork and stuff, lots of milk. But the thing just getting hungrier and bigger and starts devouring everything in its path. And I don't know what I'm sure the fairy tale had some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a reason for all this going on. The girl ends up befriending this tree stump, and she starts feeding it. And that scene where she's popping matchsticks to figure out who's going to be the next, and she puts her mother and father as just a crazy.
Well, look, you have to remember,
film.
I think the word you were going for is moral.
Thank you. Yeah, that might have been it.
I would say fables, like Aesop's fables. Fables have morals. Fairy tales can just be really fucked up.
Well, this is definitely
the real classic fairy tales, which I was thinking about it. If you look back at some of the other movies we've looked at, we've covered a number of movies that are either evocative of fairy tales or evocative of folk history, like Tala, or they are literal adaptations of familiar, like The Little Mermaid, for the lore of familiar fairy tales. This fairy tale is not one that I know outside of this movie. I'm not Czech. I didn't grow up with these fairy tales, but I mean, this could have fit right into my Grimm's fairy tales or classic fairy tales book growing up. It's got that level of darkness, and all the fairy tales just in general, they have that dark pull on us and take us all the way back to our childhood, if we're lucky enough to be readers and be read to. But if you look at the original versions, I've probably said something like this in some of the other episodes. If you look at the original versions of some of these stories, it's real dark, like The Little Mermaid. Yeah. And like Rumpelstiltskin is a really dark story about a guy who wants to steal babies and stuff. And then at the end, they figure out his name. And so the sort of sanitized version is he's like, oh no, you figured out the name. I don't get your baby. And I run away. If you read the original, he gets so angry that he grabs his ankle and pulls it up over his head and rips himself in half. No. That's pretty fucking vivid in general. Never mind when you're 8 or whatever I was when I read it. So, this movie is dark, and it implies that there could be a happy ending, but they don't give it to you. As far as is everybody eaten or are they trapped in there? Yeah. And it's not really clear. So I'm comfortable concluding that everyone is dead.
All of them, or is I forget?
Whoever ate.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't really talked about the couple who started the whole thing, especially the mother, who took to this thing right from the get, because I guess she's barren. They do this whole thing in the gynecologist office where she can't have a baby. And it's her, her psychosis, her, caring for this baby that did dad create this monster? Or, again, like I said, the husband immediately regretted bringing the stump in from the outside. And it was too late. At that point, he couldn't take it away from her. He couldn't kill it. He couldn't kill it. I mean, he was trying to chop it up a couple times, but it just, I don't know.
Well, look, there's a lot of power to obsession and the idea of willing things into existence. And sometimes that's seen as very admirable. And sometimes that's, sometimes that's triumph of the will, which is not admirable. Right. But I think you have to remember that the wife is desperate to have a child and is distraught over her inability to have a child. But the husband is obsessed with children because he wants to make his wife happy. Like the first part of the movie is you see him out on the street, and he doesn't just see babies everywhere. He sees babies easily available everywhere, like babies being wrapped up like fish and handed out. It sounds gross or weird. It's not. It's kind of sweet. Like
it's such an interesting scene, though. That's such a
because you don't know what you're watching at that point. Right. It's like the very first part of the movie, and a man is watching people get babies like it's no big deal. Right. Which for many people, that's probably what it feels like, and for women and families facing what they're facing, it's so painful because he knows that's all that my wife wants, and I can't give it to her, and she can't have it. And so his solution, as you said, he immediately regrets it. But I think he regretted it because he was like, weird shit's going to happen. Like my wife's going to be obsessed and try to breastfeed this tree stump. I don't think he anticipated it was going to turn into murder.
No. But I mean, it's a fairy tale. So he would, but also
Right.
also he cuts the watermelon open, and there's a baby inside the watermelon. These images, and these are real babies. These aren't like, even in the fish thing you're talking about, those were real babies that he's pulling out of the water and throwing in newspaper and folding up like fish.
Yep.
And
there's plenty of unsettling stop motion stuff, but some of the most unsettling stuff is people.
Yeah, but it's unsettling, but it's not, I don't know, I can't explain it. I just found it fascinating. It's not scary unsettling. Yeah. It's not gross, disgusting unsettling. It's just unsettling. It's unnerving. Like I said, unnerving. Great. The food stuff is what was making me just like, I don't understand why he's so focused on food. And there's that one close up of her eating that egg that I just cannot get out of my head when she's the yolk.
You could probably make an ASMR video of just the food scenes of really any Svankmajer project.
That scene in 9.5 Weeks where they have sex in front of the refrigerator and they're pulling food out. I just can't even, the thought of food and any sexuality just ugh. And this,
well, maybe you should skip the cook, the thief, his wife.
I will not. I know about
the cock, Alfred. It's a delicacy.
Yeah. But this was, and the girl that plays the young actress who plays this girl was really good, really good. I mean, she's sort of the center of the whole film because she knows what's going on. Kind of, she figures it out before everybody. It's the same old telling the parents what's going on and nobody believes her. And as all these people are getting taken out of getting eaten by this thing, which, like I said, she eventually befriends and starts luring people, including the pedophile, down to get eaten by this thing.
Well, you have to remember, fairy tales are something that we associate with children.
Yeah.
And part of that is, the idea that, children don't, this can obviously be perverted into something awful for children, but they don't know what's quote unquote normal. And right. I mean, even when you're little, you don't have object permanence. You don't know even what real is. Now, of course, when you're older, you find out nobody knows what real really is. But I'm not talking about philosophical things. I'm talking about, or the Matrix. I'm talking about, I have a mom, I have a dad, I have a dog, I eat breakfast, and my friend is a tree, I eat dinner. Like, it's just a thing that happens. And so she reads the fairy tale and she recognizes that this is what's going on. And this fairy tale tells her, what she's dealing with. And there's nobody else in the movie that would read that book and then say, oh, I know what's happening. I know what to do. Right. I know what the responsibility is. It kind of, some of the way that the parents, the couple, and I guess it's parents, that they manage their child. I don't know if you watched it. I don't think you did, but remember in a previous episode, we did Basket Case.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that movie. But that director made a number of other fun movies like Frankenhooker. And actually my favorite movie that he made is called Brain Damage. Mm-hmm. And Brain Damage is about a parasite that encounters, a young man encounters, and it basically wants to, eat people. And so it gives him drugs directly into his brain. It gives him pleasure in exchange for him letting the parasite ride around and kill people, often quite graphically. But when you first meet the parasite, he's got aging parents. The parasite's name is Elmer. And you see that they don't know what they're talking about quite yet, but they're really concerned about keeping something fed. And they have a bathtub full of cow brains. And they're like, can we keep him hungry? Can we keep him satisfied enough? I mean, the whole premise is we've got this child that's hungry, out of control, and he might get out and be a danger. And that's what Brain Damage is. That's what this is.
This is exactly that.
You try to restrain it, and you can't because. Yeah.
Got out of hand.
He couldn't control.
When he decides to go in and try to kill it, it was too big. He couldn't do it. Kill it.
Right.
Kill it. I mean, we're acting like this thing was this whole thing. It's the beauty of this film is it's a tree stump.
You can see it behind you, waving its arms around on the screen in the crib.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got there. It is.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the stop motion right there. I thought she was great. The woman playing the mother. I just found her fascinating to both look at and watch her progression into this nightmare of, her denial that this thing isn't alive, to the point where people are coming in the apartment and she's just letting them go in that room and get eaten. That one lady, the lady from the social services comes in and, she knows what's going to happen and she lets it happen. And again, it's a tree stump. We're all buying into this.
It's unconditional. It's unconditional love. It's her version of unconditional parental love, which I would argue is not healthy for anybody involved. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of Jack Nance in Eraserhead. Like, he sees a baby that's his baby, and it is repulsive and sick, and what is going on, and how did that happen in a world that's already weird? And this movie seems to be set in a perfectly normal world where what's weird is the perceptions of the people. So if you tell me this woman believes that her tree stump is her baby because that's how desperately she wants to have a child, and that's kind of sad, okay, that's real. But then you don't have to believe anything of the story, and you're still in danger because it's still going to eat you, or she's still going to let it eat you.
Right.
I mean, it's a specific,
and eventually
kind of
it
weird.
eats them. Eventually
And it does,
them.
yeah. Which is, another classic tale of.
The most disturbing
eating
scene is the
what
one you
came before
mentioned earlier, which is her breastfeeding this tree stump. I mean, and the befuddlement of the husband, who is just trying to keep her happy and keep the other thing happy, his baby. He kills the mailman. All this stuff.
You'll have to cut together a montage of all the films that we've done that have involved children that need to be kept from eating their parents and adults, because it's Basket Case, it's The Girl with All the Gifts, it's The Lure, it's like all these crazy things. Seems to be a theme.
MovieStrange theme. Babies eating parents.
Well, the thing is, like, it's such a specific kind of weird. Like I said, he influenced lots of different filmmakers, but it feels weird, like Terry Gilliam weird. It feels weird in some respects, like thematically some of the David Lynch movies. It's not nearly as visually interesting. Like Janae and Caro, who did Delicatessen and City of Lost Children. That's kind of a specific, distinct weird. Except it feels like it's set in the real world, and then the weirdness kind of bleeds through. But once you're fully into the movie of a tree that is a baby that eats people, that grows bigger and bigger and more dangerous, you don't have any problem believing it, because some of the characters accept it. Like you said, you're the little girl. You're like, well, everybody is what's going on. I'm going to make a friend.
And
they can't help but buy into it. Some of them resist it. Like whenever he gives his daughter a tree trunk, he thinks it'll make her feel better for a few minutes, and she's hugging it. And he's like, I just varnished it. Don't. Right. It's still wet. Like his concerns are very practical about making a mess. He has no idea how just messy it's all going to get. So
but every character, like, even there's an old lady that's growing the garden in the back that becomes part of the plot. They're all very distinct. In the pedophile, you were talking about the pedophile. Everybody has a reason in this apartment complex. They all interact with what's going on, and they're all part of what ends up happening in that place. Right down to, her luring people down into that basement to get eaten by this thing that she's befriended.
Yep.
But the thing with the matchsticks just blew me away. That she would be creating match and adding her parents to the list of people who could potentially get eaten.
Well, it's very mercenary, and when you're lonely and you have a real friend, there's no part of her that. Well,
and she didn't have a great relationship with her father. He was kind of
right, but there was no part of her that said, "Well, I finally found a friend, but he's a carnivorous tree. I can't hang out with him." They were friends.
Yeah.
She liked him. He wasn't shitty to her. He didn't leer at her and watch her panties, and he didn't make her feel like lonely and shitty like her parents did. So when it's time to make those, get you a snack decisions, everybody's fair game.
Yeah. So, I said I watched it. Remind me what happens at the end. I watched this.
Well, basically it implies that you can crack it open and some people will get out, but it goes to black before that.
Right.
So you almost wonder if it couldn't have had, the movie could be, it's really weird and unsettling. Like we said, it could have been way gorier. I mean, there's organs and blood and stuff like that, but some of Svankmajer's other shorts, like he has one called, I think it's called Steak Love or something. It's like 1 minute and 15 seconds of 2 cuts of steak that come to life and fuck, basically. And they're like glistening raw meat, and it's just really unsettling and weird. It's not, this movie's not that moist and gooey. It could be a lot splatterier and grosser. Yeah. And if you read some of the reviews at the time and stuff, there are people who made a comparison I think is really interesting to one of Peter Jackson's best movies before he came to become the guy behind the Lord of the Rings and stuff. He did Dead Alive, or it's called Brain Dead. It's hard to find in a decent high def version in this country. It's basically a zombie movie, except it's all about mother issues, and it's the goriest, wettest, splatteriest. Like, one of the big final scenes of the movie is our hero, I think his name is Nigel, going through a crowd of zombies with a lawnmower holding it up. And whatever you imagine when I say that, the movie's wetter than that.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, this movie is thematically about a lot of those things, about parenthood and relationships between parents and children, and definitely about some of the same, you know, consuming and eating and all that kind of stuff. It's not as gory though at all.
No, not gory, gory, because they could have, with all the tentacles this thing had. You could imagine the stuff he could have done with that.
Well, they're not tentacles; they're just branches, Ralph. Are you afraid of branches?
Well, there is fingers and his toes.
There are fingers, and it has teeth inside of its.
Oh yeah, those come out every now and then. Yeah,
it has teeth,
and the one eye that pops out, and looks around. That was in the trailer, and it's weird. Very wet. The food is very wet and gooey, and
that's the gooey stuff. Yeah.
And a lot of milk, a lot of bottles of milk that they're constantly trying to. Anyway, it's a fascinating film. Never would have watched it if I weren't doing this show, obviously, like most of these things. But boy, oh boy, it's still in my head. It's still in there, and it's. Do I want to go see more of his stuff? I might want to see that steak one. That sounds kind of weirdly interesting.
Well, you know, if you want to see more of his stuff, he has a lot of shorts. There's a lot of award-winning shorts, and so they're 8 minutes, they're 10 minutes, they're 15 minutes. And I think I sent you some of them, but if you wanted to know specifically which ones, there's indexes of what's out there. They're really good. And he also did a version of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, I saw that in some
I guess
of my
in the mid-90s. It's a feature. It's called Alice, and it is as Svankmajer as this one is. Again, they're all low budget and very creative and very visually memorable. I don't think they're beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of reverse shot of dialogue with people basically looking right into the camera, especially if it's a conversation between the little girl and an adult, and the way it's angled up at the adult and down at the child. Well, you know, Jonathan Demme's movies, you know, Silence of the Lambs, and all of his movies are just gorgeous, human,
straight
intense, straight into the camera. It's not that. It doesn't have that level of
sophistication, but he's doing something. I'm looking at the scene now. This is all they do is eat. This whole family, that's all they do is eat. No,
that's the other thing. I've said this about other movies. There's probably a lot of Czech stuff culturally
that we
because it's not just there's our little baby again. It's not just a fairy tale. It's a Czech fairy tale by a Czech writer, a Czechoslovakian writer from the 1800s, from the 19th century. And so there is definitely cultural stuff. You know, if it was a movie about Paul Bunyan and you are from, Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic, you might feel a little bit left out of some of that too. I don't feel left out in a bad way. I'm just saying there's probably other layers of things that I don't pick up, which is what I said about the lore and other things.
Yeah,
it
same
just
thing.
Makes you want to
cultural
go learn
things
all
that
those
we'll
things.
never. Right.
Yeah, but you want to learn about it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway,
yeah, it's a pretty strange movie. So I thought this is a
movie strange for sure. But I think a good one. I think you should, if you get a chance, you should take a look. And I'm streaming this through YouTube anyway. It's streaming through YouTube.
Yes, it is on YouTube.
And then all his shorts that you're talking about are on there too.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah, and if you go and you're interested in it, you can read some of the contemporary reviews. You know, like Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars. Like, it was reviewed by mainstream newspaper critics and stuff, and people had very positive reactions to it, while also saying it's not for everyone,
right?
But this is definitely something you haven't seen before, and it's worth seeing. And there's lots of stuff that you haven't seen before, and you're not missing anything. And this is definitely not one of those.
It is super interesting, though. It really is. I mean, it's just fascinating.
Good. I'm glad you dug it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, people check this one out. I hope they do. Get some likes on this one, some subscriptions maybe. Who knows? Take a look. This thing is wild and well worth the watch. So
yep, find it on YouTube. It's also available on DVD. Surprisingly, no 4K release yet, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Well, they'll get there. We'll see. All right, brother. Well, look, we got the holidays coming up.
Yep.
So more holidays. I mean, you're right in the smack in the middle one now, and then we got
And more to
Christmas
come.
coming up and
Yep.
New Year's and all that, and we got another variant of the COVID coming. Who knows? It's gonna be a great end of the year. So
Yeah.
so
It's
try
full
to
of surprises.
stay healthy through this stuff. We'll see what happens next time. We'll do another one of these, but just take a little break now for the holidays and
Yep. Have
take a look
great
at some of
holiday.
these films we've done, and let's watch some more. Look at that.
Right,
Close-ups
sounds
of
good, bud.
mouths and teeth and feet and food. So great.
Yep. Good stuff.
All right, sir.
Good stuff.
Talk to you soon.
See you, bud.
All right.